"Get this monkey away from my table. You people need to learn your place." Isabella Whitmore's manicured hand tightened around her wine glass as she rose from her seat at the VIP table. Without a second's thought, she tilted the glass and poured red Cabernet over Marcus Richardson's head. The liquid streamed down his face, staining his tailored suit and splattering across the pristine white tablecloth like spilled blood. "Did you really think you belonged here?" she said coldly, setting the empty glass down with a sharp clink. Her words hung in the air, dripping with contempt. The entire Silicon Valley charity gala froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Cameras came up. Every eye in the room turned toward them. What Isabella didn't realize was that in that single arrogant act, she had just destroyed her family's $1 billion legacy. The man sitting there, silent but composed, wasn't some uninvited guest. He was the one person with the power to erase everything the Whitmore family had built over 3 generations. Have you ever witnessed racism cost someone everything? Let's rewind 11 hours and see how it all began. The Tech Innovation Charity Gala was Silicon Valley's most exclusive night of the year, a $1,200 a plate invitation, only affair where $1 billion deals were sealed over champagne and caviar. Inside the Fairmont Hotel's glittering grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers reflected off designer gowns and polished shoes. It was the kind of event where old money met new power, and Isabella Whitmore moved through it like she owned every inch of the room. In many ways, she did. Isabella was the 3rd-generation heir to Whitmore Industries, one of America's biggest defense contractors. Her family's fortune had been forged in war. Her great-grandfather made ammunition, her grandfather built aircraft, and her father mastered missile systems. Now, the weight of that legacy rested on her shoulders, but behind the glamour and pride, a storm was brewing. Whitmore Industries was bleeding money fast. 3 major government contracts had collapsed in the past year, and the empire her ancestors built was starting to crack. The Pentagon had started turning away from traditional defense giants like Whitmore Industries. The future of warfare was evolving toward drones, cyber defense, and AI-driven combat, and the new generation of tech-savvy contractors was quickly taking over. James Whitmore, Isabella's husband and the company's CEO, understood the stakes. They needed a miracle, a $1 billion government contract to keep Whitmore Industries alive. "Tomorrow's announcement could save us," James had murmured in the car. "The Defense Innovation Unit is about to name its next major contractor. If we land that UAV deal, we're secure for the next decade." Isabella barely paid attention. Her mind wasn't on strategy or survival. It was on status. At the gala, she was determined to remind everyone that she still belonged at the top of Silicon Valley's elite. As the night went on, her arrogance turned venomous. She sent back her champagne twice, complaining that the Latino server's hands were unclean. She mocked a black valet, asking if he'd even finished high school. And when a young Asian entrepreneur tried to introduce herself, Isabella smiled coldly and said she'd look more at home with the catering staff. Each insult was disguised behind a polite laugh, a performance of superiority from a woman desperate to feel powerful as everything beneath her began to crumble. But the person Isabella truly had her sights on hadn't arrived yet. When Marcus Richardson entered the ballroom at precisely 9 p.m., she spotted him instantly. It wasn't because he demanded attention. It was because he didn't. His confidence was quiet, his navy suit perfectly fitted, his posture crisp and assured, almost military. He carried himself like a man who belonged there, and that alone made Isabella's jaw tighten. Who invited him? She muttered to her companion, Margaret, a thin, sharp-tongued socialite known for collecting charity board seats like trophies. Margaret glanced over and smirked. No idea. Probably some diversity quota thing. Isabella's eyes followed Marcus as he moved through the crowd. People greeted him warmly, shaking his hand with genuine respect. Business cards exchanged effortlessly. Conversations opened up around him, not out of obligation, but admiration. He wasn't trying to climb, others were trying to reach him, and that unsettled her deeply. "James, Isabella hissed, clutching her husband's arm. Do you know that man, the one standing by the silent auction table? James glanced across the ballroom, distracted. Which one? The black one, in the navy suit. Someone should check his invitation. Isabella, please. James muttered under his breath, not tonight. We can't afford any incidents. But Isabella had already made up her mind. All through dinner, her attention kept drifting back to Marcus Richardson's table. He wasn't just mingling. He was seated with 3 Pentagon officials and 2 tech CEO she recognized from Forbes covers. The tone at that table was sharp, deliberate, strategy, not small talk. Whatever they were discussing, it was important. And in Isabella's mind, it was something that should have involved her family's company. Finally, she rose from her chair, glass of red wine in hand. "Excuse me," she said smoothly, the words already rehearsed in her head. "I think there's been a mistake with the seating arrangements." The gala was about to witness exactly what Isabella Whitmore thought of people like Marcus Richardson, black professionals who dared to sit at tables reserved for their betters. What she didn't know was that Marcus had noticed her long before she ever noticed him. Every insult, every sneer at a server, every cruel glance. He had taken mental notes. Tonight, he wasn't just attending a gala. He was assessing character, and Isabella Whitmore had failed that test completely. As she approached, her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor. The chandeliers above caught the light in her wine glass, the dark red liquid swirling like a storm about to break. At the table, Marcus sat composed, his calm unbroken. He had faced real threat, enemy combat zones, foreign intelligence operations, and a lifetime of prejudice. But never had he encountered anyone quite like Isabella Whitmore. A woman so blinded by her own arrogance that she was seconds away from destroying everything her family had built. "Excuse me," Isabella said louder this time, making sure nearby tables could hear. "I believe there's been some confusion with tonight's seating." Conversation at Marcus's table stopped. 5 faces turned toward her, 3 Pentagon officials, 2 tech executives, and Marcus himself. The attention only made her stand taller. "I'm Isabella Whitmore," she announced as if the name itself carried divine weight. "Whitmore Industries, we've partnered with the Department of Defense for over 65 years. My great-grandfather built the ammunition that helped win World War II. Isabella added proudly, lifting her chin. One of the Pentagon officials, a stern woman with silver hair and a colonel's insignia, gave a polite nod. "Mrs. Whitmore, good to see you this evening." Isabella smiled, but her gaze stayed locked on Marcus Richardson like a hawk circling its prey. "I couldn't help but notice," she said, "that someone seems to be sitting at the wrong table. The VIP section is typically reserved for actual defense contractors and military leadership, not," she paused deliberately, "charity cases." The tension was immediate. Around the ballroom, conversation stilled. Phones lifted quietly, cameras began recording. Nothing spread faster online than the downfall of the powerful, and everyone sensed they were about to witness one. Marcus looked up, steady and composed. "I believe my invitation specified table 12. He said calmly, "Is there a problem, ma'am?" "Your invitation." Isabella's voice dripped with disdain. "And who exactly sponsored your attendance tonight? Because from where I'm standing, I see real military brass and real business leaders." She gestured toward the others at the table, and then, "You." "The Defense Innovation Unit invited me," Marcus replied, his voice steady. Isabella's brows shot up. She knew exactly what the DIU was: the Pentagon's elite tech division, responsible for modern warfare and innovation. But in her mind, the idea that this man could be one of its key decision-makers didn't fit. "I see," she said coolly. "And what company do you represent? Which government program brought you here?" "I'm here in my capacity as, let me guess." She cut in sharply, her voice rising just enough for nearby tables to hear. "A diversity contractor, some outreach hire to make the Pentagon look inclusive." The executives around the table shifted in discomfort. This was not the conversation anyone had expected or wanted. Actually, ma'am, Marcus said calmly, I'm here to evaluate potential partners for our next major defense initiative. Isabella's laugh echoed across the room, sharp, mocking, and brittle like shattered glass. Evaluate you, that's adorable. What exactly qualifies you to evaluate anything in the defense sector? Did you take an online course? Ma'am, perhaps we should move on. One of the Pentagon officials interjected, clearly uneasy. But Isabella wasn't done. She waved the official off with a dismissive flick of her hand. No, I think this needs to be said. Too many unqualified people are getting opportunities they don't deserve, just because of the color of their skin. It's not fair to companies like mine that earn their place at tables like this. The room went still. Forks stopped midair. Cameras zoomed in. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Even her companion, Margaret, leaned in and whispered, Isabella, darling, maybe we should— No, Margaret. Isabella snapped. Someone needs to say it out loud. She raised her voice, ensuring every ear in the room caught each venomous word. I've watched him all evening, charming the powerful, pretending he belongs here, as if he's earned the right to sit with actual decision-makers. Well, I have news for you. Marcus stood slowly. He didn't shout. He didn't so much as blink. His height and composure commanded silence. His posture was firm, disciplined, unmistakably military. His calm presence filled the space with quiet authority, enough to make Isabella hesitate for the first time that night. Mrs. Whitmore, he said evenly, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Don't you dare interrupt me. Isabella snapped, jabbing her manicured finger toward his chest. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? My family has been serving this country since before your people even had the right to vote, before you were allowed in the same buildings as real Americans. The words struck the air like a detonation. Even Margaret gasped. Isabella, please, she whispered, her voice trembling. From across the ballroom, James Whitmore's voice broke through the tension as he pushed through the crowd. Isabella, stop, please. No, James, she barked, cutting him off. Someone needs to say what everyone else is thinking. Isabella raised her wine glass with both hands, her face tightening with self-righteous fury. I'm tired of pretending that diversity, quotas, and affirmative action create real qualifications, she snapped. I'm tired of watching unearned people take seats that belong to families like mine. Security began to push through the stunned crowd, but they were still several steps away. Get this monkey away from my table, Isabella declared, her voice cutting through the ballroom like a blade. You people need to learn your place, and your place isn't here pretending to be something you're not. She tilted the glass. A rush of red wine cascaded over Marcus Richardson's head, soaking his hair, streaming down his face, staining his navy suit. The deep crimson splashed across the pristine white tablecloth like spilled blood. Did you really think you belonged here? She sneered, setting the empty glass down with a sharp clink. Did you really think anyone was fooled by your little act? The room froze. Not a sound. Forks hovered midair. 300 of the most powerful people in America stood in absolute silence, and then Marcus smiled, not bitter, not angry, just calm, steady, and knowing. The kind of smile that said she'd just destroyed herself without realizing it. Interesting choice, Mrs. Whitmore, he said quietly, pulling a folded handkerchief from his pocket. With measured precision, he wiped the wine from his face, very revealing. Security finally reached the table, but Marcus raised a hand to stop them. That won't be necessary, gentlemen. Mrs. Whitmore was simply expressing her views on military contracting and racial hierarchy. Sir, are you sure? One guard asked softly. We can escort her out. No need. Marcus replied evenly. Mrs. Whitmore has made her position perfectly clear. This has been very educational. Isabella stood taller, convinced she had won some kind of moral victory. Around her, a few of her socialite friends nodded faintly, mistaking her disgrace for defiance. I'm glad we could clear that up, she said, chin lifted. Sometimes direct communication is the only way to handle these situations. But something shifted. The Pentagon officials didn't clap. They looked appalled. The tech executive stared at her as if she'd just sabotaged her own empire. And James Whitmore, standing beside the table now, stared at his wife with hollow eyes, like a man watching his life's work crumble before him. "Isabella," James's voice trembled. "What have you done? What needed to be done?" she said proudly. "I reminded everyone of the proper order. I defended our family's name." James turned to Marcus, his face pale as chalk. "Sir, I am so incredibly sorry. My wife didn't mean, your wife meant exactly what she said." Marcus interrupted gently, folding the wine-stained handkerchief with precision. "Character assessments are most accurate when people believe there are no consequences for their actions." James froze. "Character assessments," Marcus straightened his tie, every movement calm and deliberate. "It's been an enlightening evening, Mr. Whitmore. I think we've learned everything we need to know about Whitmore Industries' corporate culture and leadership philosophy." He stepped past Isabella, pausing just long enough to meet her eyes. "Some mistakes," he said quietly, "can't be undone." "I hope the wine was worth it." As Marcus Richardson walked away, phones across the ballroom were already recording, uploading, and sharing. Within minutes, #Winegate flooded every corner of social media. Isabella Whitmore stood tall, still convinced she'd won, completely unaware that she'd just destroyed a 70-year defense dynasty with a single racist act. By 6 a.m. the next morning, she was the most hated woman in America. Every platform, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, was filled with clips of her pouring wine on a black man at a charity gala. The #Winegate was trending #1 worldwide, eclipsing even celebrity scandals and breaking news. But the fury wasn't just over the act. It was what came after. At 2 a.m., while her husband begged her to stay silent, Isabella posted on Instagram, "Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right. Real Americans shouldn't have to apologize for defending our values and institutions. #Truth matters, #real talk, #no apologies." Within hours, the post exploded over 30,000 comments in 4 hours, nearly all furious. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Boycotts against Whitmore Industries trended across the globe. Then came the financial collapse. At 7 a.m., James Whitmore stood in his home office, watching pre-market numbers plunge. Down 8%, then 12%, then 15%. Algorithmic traders were dumping Whitmore Industries stock like radioactive material. His phone buzzed nonstop. Angry investors, panicked board members, terrified executives. Everyone was asking the same question: what was Isabella thinking? The truth was, James didn't even know who Marcus Richardson really was. "Get me everything on that man," he ordered his assistant. "Background, employment, social media, everything." 3 hours later, the report came back thin. No LinkedIn, no Facebook, no Twitter, just a few lines. "Born in Detroit. Graduated from West Point. Military service, that's it." James muttered, flipping through the 2-page file. "No one has this little digital footprint. Not in 2024. His assistant hesitated. "Sir, there's one explanation. People with classified clearances often have their digital presence scrubbed. Intelligence, special operations, CA, NSA." James's stomach turned to stone. "You think he's government, I think." His assistant replied carefully, "We should find out before your wife does another interview." But it was already too late. Isabella was live on a local news broadcast, chin lifted, voice dripping with pride instead of regret. "I stand by what I did," she declared. "That man was clearly out of place. Someone had to say what everyone else was thinking. These diversity programs are out of control, and real Americans are tired of pretending otherwise." The clip went viral within minutes for all the wrong reasons. By 11:00 a.m., James's phone buzzed. The caller ID was blocked. "Mr. Whitmore," said a firm, composed voice on the other end. "This is Colonel Patricia Hayes from the Pentagon's personnel office. We need to schedule an urgent meeting regarding your defense contracts." James's throat went dry. "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where you come to us, Mr. Whitmore, today, 2 o'clock. He hesitated. "Can you tell me what this is about?" Last night's incident involving General Richardson. The line went dead. General, the word hit James like a hammer. His mind went blank, then filled with dread. The man his wife had called a monkey, the man she drenched in wine in front of Silicon Valley's elite, was a U.S. Army general. He tried calling Isabella, but she was too busy giving more interviews, doubling down, calling herself the only one brave enough to speak the truth. She's lost her mind, James muttered to his brother Michael, the company's COO. Do you understand what this means? If that man's really a general, if he's involved in defense procurement. Michael's face was gray. 3 of our subcontractors already suspended deals. Aurora Group canceled next week's meeting. Boeing's reviewing their supply chain. The fallout's spreading faster than we can manage. By noon, every major outlet, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, ran the same headline. Socialite pours wine on black man at Gala, turns out he's a 4-star general. Isabella's face was everywhere, frozen mid-sneer, eyes blazing with arrogance. At exactly 2 p.m., James Whitmore walked into a secure Pentagon conference room. Seated at the head of the table was the same man from the Gala, now in full uniform, medals gleaming beneath the fluorescent light. General Marcus Richardson, United States Army. James's legs nearly gave out. Every moment from the night before replayed in his mind. The composure, the respect he'd commanded, the quiet control. He hadn't been just a guest. He'd been the most powerful man in the room. Please sit down, Mr. Whitmore, General Richardson said calmly. His voice was steady, disciplined, the tone of someone used to giving orders that changed lives. We have quite a bit to discuss. James sat, heart pounding, his mind spiraling with one devastating truth. His wife hadn't just embarrassed their family. She had ended it. General Richardson. James began shakily. I want to make it absolutely clear. My wife's actions last night were inexcusable, racist, disgraceful. They don't reflect who we are as a company. General Richardson clasped his hands together, eyes fixed on him. I agree completely, he said. Around the table sat Colonel Patricia Hayes from Pentagon personnel, Amanda Carter from the Secretary of Defense's office, and 2 senior officials from the Defense Innovation Unit. Every one of them had either witnessed the event in person or seen the viral footage now viewed by millions. Let me be clear, Mr. Whitmore, General Richardson continued, his tone precise. When the Defense Innovation Unit evaluates contractors, we don't just assess technology or financial stability. We assess character, leadership, the kind of people we can trust with billions of taxpayer dollars, and the lives of our soldiers. James nodded rapidly. Of course, General, that makes perfect sense. Last night, Richardson said, pausing just long enough for the weight of his words to land, I was conducting what we call a cultural assessment of several potential partners for our next UAV initiative, a $1. $2 billion autonomous drone systems contract. James froze. The UAV contract, the one that was supposed to save Whitmore Industries, going into last night, General Richardson said, his voice steady and controlled. Whitmore Industries was at the top of our list. Your technical specs were excellent. Your pricing was competitive. Your performance record was solid. He paused, eyes locked on James. Was past tense. Character matters, Mr. Whitmore. When we select defense partners, we're not just purchasing equipment. We're aligning with values. We need to know who we're trusting with our soldiers' lives and how you treat people. Your employees, your partners, your fellow citizens. He picked up a tablet from the table and turned it toward James. The screen played the viral footage. Isabella rising from her chair, glass in hand, red wine spilling over Marcus's face, followed by clips of her unapologetic interviews. Your wife, Richardson said quietly, called me a monkey in front of 300 witnesses, then went on television to defend it. James's shoulders slumped. General, please. Isabella doesn't speak for the company. She holds no operational role. She's the majority shareholder's wife. Richardson interrupted smoothly. She's the public face of your family's legacy, and whether you like it or not, she represents your company's values. James's lips parted, but no words came. Colonel Hayes leaned forward, her tone clipped. We've reviewed your board structure. leadership demographics, and HR data. Let's just say the numbers match what we saw last night. Amanda Carter added coolly, when the Department of Defense awards contracts, we assess integrity as much as innovation. And after last night, we've seen everything we need to see about Whitmore Industries' culture. The room went silent. The judgment was clear before the words were even spoken. General Richardson adjusted his uniform. Effective immediately, Whitmore Industries is withdrawn from all active and pending government contracts. A formal notice will be issued by close of business today. James's world cracked open. The room seemed to tilt. Richardson gathered his papers and stood. Mrs. Whitmore wanted to remind everyone about hierarchy. He said evenly, I suppose she succeeded. He paused at the door, his gaze cutting through the silence. Tell your wife, he said quietly, that we in the Defense Department also believe in hierarchy, just not the kind she understands. Then he left the room, his footsteps slow and deliberate, leaving James sitting in the ruins of everything his family had built. Secretary Carter slid a folder across the table. Over the past 4 years, Whitmore Industries has been involved in 3 discrimination lawsuits. She said, 2 settled quietly. The third concluded a hostile work environment for minority employees. James felt his throat tighten. Those were isolated incidents, he said weakly. We've made improvements. Diversity programs, training, have you? Richardson asked, turning back slightly. His tone was calm, but it carried weight. Because what I saw last night told me otherwise. Then he walked to the display screen on the wall and tapped a button. Images filled the screen. A young soldier in dusty fatigues, a patrol in Afghanistan, a medal ceremony in Washington, a command photo in uniform. I enlisted in the U.S. Army 25 years ago, Richardson said, served 3 tours in Afghanistan, earned my commission in the field. Every step forward, I had to fight twice as hard just to be seen as equal. He glanced at James, his expression measured. I've been called every name your wife threw at me, and worse, by people who thought their bloodlines made them superior, by people who believed the color of my skin meant I didn't belong. He paused, then added quietly, but I stayed. I rose, and last night your wife reminded me exactly why I did. He turned from the screen and fixed his eyes on James. Today, I oversee the Defense Innovation Unit's $50 billion annual budget. General Richardson said evenly. Every major technology contract the Pentagon awards crosses my desk, including the UAV initiative that could have saved your company. The room went silent. Only the faint hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Every person who's ever underestimated me, Richardson continued, taught me something about character, but your wife's performance last night, that was a masterclass. He sat back down, hands folded neatly. She didn't just reveal her own prejudice. She revealed the environment that allowed it to grow, the kind of leadership you permit, the kind of values you represent when you call yourselves patriots. James swallowed hard. General, please, she was under enormous pressure. She'd been drinking. This isn't who she is, Mr. Whitmore. Richardson interrupted, calm but firm. Alcohol doesn't create racism, it reveals it. Stress doesn't cause prejudice, it exposes it. The words hit with surgical precision. Colonel Hayes leaned forward. The UAV contract has been officially awarded to Northrop Grumman. The decision was finalized this morning. James felt the air leave his lungs. $1. $4 billion, gone. Secretary Carter added, we're also reviewing all active Whitmore Industries contracts. If we find evidence of cultural or ethical violations, those contracts will be terminated immediately. James sat frozen, realizing he was watching his family's 65-year empire collapse in real time. All because his wife couldn't hold her tongue for one night. There is one thing you can still do, Richardson said quietly. James looked up, desperate. Anything. Remove your wife from all involvement in the company, fire her from any advisory or symbolic position, hire an independent firm to conduct a full ethics and diversity audit, and issue a public apology that acknowledges wrongdoing, not one written by your PR team. James nodded rapidly. Yes, I'll do all of that. Richardson's gaze stayed steady. Even if you do, it won't bring the UAV contract back. That's gone. What's left to decide is whether Whitmore Industries has a future at all. When James left the Pentagon that afternoon, he understood. Isabella hadn't caused a scandal. She'd committed corporate suicide. He sat in his car for 25 minutes outside the building, staring at his phone. 17 missed calls, all from the woman who'd just detonated everything. When he finally drove home, the sight that greeted him made his blood boil. Isabella sitting under studio lights, mid-interview with a conservative podcast host who introduced her as a woman standing up for traditional American values. What people don't understand, Isabella was saying confidently, is that I was defending merit. My family's served this country for generations. We've earned our place through hard work, not quotas. The host nodded approvingly. So you have no regrets, none whatsoever, she said proudly. I'd do it again tomorrow. James stepped into the room and switched off the cameras with a single motion. Isabella, he said coldly, we need to talk, now. She flashed a dismissive smile. James, perfect timing. I was just explaining to Marcus here, out, James barked. Everyone out now, the crew scrambled, grabbing cables and tripods as they fled. The air in the room thickened. Isabella frowned. What's wrong? The interview was going perfectly. James's voice was shaking, but his eyes burned. Do you want to know who you poured wine on last night? She rolled her eyes. Some diversity hire who? General Marcus Richardson. James cut her off, head of the Defense Innovation Unit. The man who controls $55 billion in Pentagon contracts. Isabella blinked, color draining from her face. That's not possible. He was just sitting there like he belonged. James said, his voice breaking, he did, more than you, more than me. You poured wine on a 4-star general. Her lips parted. The UAV contract, gone, James said flatly, awarded to Northrop Grumman this morning, and that's not all. You've poisoned every relationship we had left in Washington. She sank into the chair, stunned. We can fix this. We can explain. Explain what? James exploded. That my wife is a racist who humiliated a black general in front of the entire defense community. You didn't just shame yourself, Isabella. He took a long, broken breath. You ended us. I'm not a racist. Isabella snapped back. I was protecting what? James cut her off, his voice rising. Your ego. You don't protect a legacy by humiliating people. You protect it by honoring it, and you just buried ours. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Emergency board meeting, called by her father. 2 hours later, the Whitmore Industries boardroom was filled to capacity. Executives, shareholders, legal counsel, all waiting. At the head of the table sat Richard Whitmore, founder and patriarch, his face carved in stone. Isabella, he said quietly, each word clipped and dangerous, explain to me what you were thinking. She straightened, forcing confidence into her tone. Daddy, I was defending our family's name. That man was completely out of place. A voice cut through from across the table. Patricia Collins, a board member and former Army colonel, leaned forward. That man, Mrs. Whitmore, she said sharply, was General Marcus Richardson. The air shifted. I served under him in Afghanistan. Collins continued, her tone firm. General Richardson is one of the most respected officers in the United States military. Isabella's expression faltered. Another board member, former Secretary of Defense William Hayes, leaned forward, eyes hard. Do you have any idea what you've done to this company's credibility? 15 major clients have already called. Every one of them is questioning whether they want their names tied to Whitmore Industries. This is just a misunderstanding, Isabella said quickly, her voice trembling but defiant. Once people see the full context, Richard's voice sliced through her words. The full context is that my daughter poured wine on a black general while calling him a racial slur, and then spent the next 18 hours doubling down on live television. The room fell silent. Patricia Collins opened her laptop and connected it to the projector. Let's review what the world has seen. The lights dimmed. The massive screen filled with clips and headlines. Billionaire's wife defends racial outburst. Isabella Whitmore calls military official an animal. #Winegate still trending #1 worldwide. Then came the Instagram video of Isabella smiling into the camera, saying, "I stand by what I did. Someone had to speak up for real Americans." The silence that followed was suffocating. She called him an animal, Collins said flatly. On camera, in front of Pentagon officials, "I was protecting American values." Isabella cried, her voice cracking. "American values?" Richard's tone turned glacial. "Tell me, Isabella, since when is racism an American value? Since when is humiliating a decorated general part of our company's mission?" No one spoke. The air in the room was electric, heavy with disbelief and anger. Finally, Collins broke the silence. "We've been contacted by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They're opening a full investigation into Whitmore Industries' workplace culture." Hayes added grimly, "And the Pentagon has begun a review of all active contracts. If they find even a hint of bias or misconduct, every deal will be canceled." Isabella's mother, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp with heartbreak. "Isabella, you haven't just embarrassed yourself. You've destroyed everything this family built. Your grandfather's legacy, your father's life's work. It's gone." Isabella's bravado finally cracked. Her voice was small, trembling. "I can fix this," she whispered. "I'll apologize. I'll go public." "It's too late for apologies," Richard said coldly. "You don't apologize for a fire after you've burned the house down." He leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "The only question left is whether this company survives the ashes." Collins tapped a few keys, pulling up a financial dashboard on the screen. "Stock is down 47% since this morning. Market value has dropped by nearly $600 million in under 24 hours. 3 board members have resigned. 2 of our top suppliers have suspended contracts." She looked up at Isabella, voice steady. "This isn't just a PR crisis. This is collapse." Isabella sat frozen, her face pale, eyes unfocused, finally realizing what her pride had cost her. For the first time in her life, she understood. It wasn't General Richardson who didn't belong at that table. It was her. That ending lands beautifully. It closes the loop between arrogance and accountability while widening the lens to show national impact. If you're planning to use this as your final narration or for a YouTube short/documentary piece, it's already in near-perfect form. Here's a lightly polished version that preserves every word and tone but tightens rhythm and pacing for storytelling flow. She hadn't just ruined a night. She had burned an empire to the ground with 1 glass of wine and a lifetime of prejudice. The boardroom sat in suffocating silence, the only sound the soft hum of the projector. "Stocks down 33% since yesterday," Hayes said grimly. 4 major subcontracts already gone. Boeing is reassessing. Lockheed canceled next week's meeting. Raytheon's pulling out entirely. Richard Whitmore pushed his chair back and stood. His voice was steady, but the fury beneath it was unmistakable. "By the authority vested in me as chairman, I'm removing Isabella Whitmore from all positions within Whitmore Industries, effective immediately. Daddy, you can't, I can," he said flatly, "and I am. Your trust fund is frozen pending a full investigation into the damage your actions caused." The rest of the board voted, unanimous. Her mother, Eleanor, spoke next, voice quiet but firm. "This didn't come out of nowhere, Isabella. We've seen the way you treat people for years. Servers, staff, anyone you thought was beneath you. It ends now." Patricia Collins opened another folder. "We found more complaints, a wrongful termination case from 2018. Settled quietly. 3 internal HR reports flagged for racial hostility. This isn't a slip, it's a pattern." Hayes added, "General Richardson didn't just see one incident. He saw your culture, and he judged the company by it." Isabella looked around the table, family, mentors, people she'd grown up with. But all she saw now were strangers. "Please," she whispered, "this is my family's company, too." Richard shook his head slowly. "No, Isabella, a family protects its legacy. You destroyed ours. No one moved." Then James spoke for the first time, voice calm but cold. "I've filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow." Her jaw fell open. "James, please. I won't let you take the company, or me, down with you. When the meeting ended, Isabella was alone. No title, no income, no marriage, no empire, all because she couldn't restrain her hatred for one night. But her downfall wasn't finished. While the Whitmore empire imploded, General Marcus Richardson was leading a quiet revolution inside the Pentagon. His humiliation had become a catalyst for reform. 7 weeks later, a pale, trembling Isabella Whitmore stood on the courthouse steps, reading from a sheet of paper written by her court-appointed attorney. The woman who once dripped luxury now stood in a wrinkled department store suit, voice shaking. "I want to publicly apologize to General Marcus Richardson for my inexcusable behavior," she read. "My actions were wrong and do not represent the values America stands for." The words felt empty. Cameras clicked. Protesters shouted. Online, the comments were brutal. Too late. She's only sorry she got caught. Not remorse, damage control. That same afternoon at the Pentagon, General Richardson addressed the press. Mrs. Whitmore's apology is noted. He said evenly, "But this was never about personal revenge. It's about ensuring that those who work with our military reflect the values our soldiers fight for: respect, dignity, equality." The clip went viral for all the right reasons. The man she tried to humiliate had answered hate with discipline and grace. Inside the wreckage of Whitmore Industries, James Whitmore began rebuilding. He launched the most sweeping cultural overhaul in the company's history. Every employee underwent ethics and bias training. Leadership was restructured. Civil rights advisors rewrote policy from the ground up. "We're not just changing rules," James told his staff, "we're changing who we are." Dr. Maya Johnson, a leading diversity consultant, released her first report, 16 Years of Buried Complaints, Discrimination, and Exclusion. Isabella's outburst wasn't an exception. It was the symptom of rot. James vowed to fix it, even if it took the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Isabella's own life unraveled. Her prenuptial agreement left her with nothing. The mansion, the cars, the art, all gone. She moved into a one-room apartment in Oakland and began her 200 hours of court-ordered community service at a soup kitchen. There, she served the very people she once mocked: Black, Latino, immigrant, and poor. Every bowl of soup, every quiet thank you, chipped away at the arrogance that had once defined her. She ladled food for a veteran who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan, helped a single mother fill out job applications, listened to stories of hardship and resilience that forced her to confront her own blindness. For the first time, Isabella began to understand what humanity really meant. While she worked toward redemption, General Richardson reshaped the nation's defense industry. His character and culture assessment became a mandatory part of all major Pentagon contracts. Technical excellence means nothing. Richardson told Congress, if it's wrapped in prejudice, our military defends equality. Our contractors must live it. His reforms spread. Within months, 18 federal agencies adopted similar standards. Companies that had thrived on old boy privilege were forced to change or collapse. Ironically, Isabella's arrogance sparked the largest civil rights shift in federal contracting since the 19th century. Under James's leadership, Whitmore Industries became a case study in redemption. Once worth billions, then nearly bankrupt, it rebuilt itself on transparency and equality. A Forbes headline captured it best: "From Scandal to Standard, How Whitmore Industries Became the Face of Corporate Accountability." When asked how he managed it, James said simply, "Sometimes you have to let everything burn to see what's worth rebuilding." The company was now minority-owned, its board diverse, and its culture transformed. A year later, Isabella was still at the Oakland shelter, no longer by mandate, but by choice. Miss Isabella, called Marcus, the elderly veteran she'd once served. "You got those job forms ready for tomorrow?" "I do," she said with a small smile, sorting through papers. This time her hands were steady, not manicured, but strong. Across town, General Richardson continued his work as a four-star general, mentoring the next generation of officers. And across the country, the reforms he began were changing how power looked, who held it, and what it stood for. One afternoon, Eleanor Whitmore visited her daughter. She watched quietly as Isabella worked beside volunteers. "I'm proud of you," she said softly as they walked to Isabella's old Honda Civic, "not for what happened, but for what you've become." Isabella glanced back at the shelter. "I destroyed everything, Mom. The company, our name, my marriage. I hurt so many people." Her mother nodded gently. "Yes, but you also started something that mattered. Sometimes it takes the worst of us to bring out the best in others." Isabella Whitmore had lost her wealth, her power, her privilege, but in losing it all, she found something real: humility, empathy, and purpose. The true measure of redemption isn't what you say after you fall. It's what you do when no one's watching. And though her story began with hate, it ended with healing, for her, for those she'd wronged, and for a system that finally learned how to see. So the question remains, have you ever seen someone's arrogance backfire so completely it changed history itself? Sometimes justice doesn't come from heroes. Sometimes it begins with the fall of those who thought they could never fall at all.